Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of our FTB Neotech Modpack playthrough. Hope you've all had a fantastic day so far. Me, it's going pretty swell. And so, without further ado, let's dive into everything behind me. Now, in between episodes, and as I've been mentioning over the past couple episodes for this series, I'm kind of trying to knock this mod pack out sooner rather than later, and we're getting pretty close. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I did a lot of progress off camera, but also something to keep in mind, most of these quests over here are just check marks. I'm pretty sure all of them are, as a matter of fact. Oh, wait, you get a slime block there. So yeah, I mean, every once in a while you'll get something from all these bucket quests, but they really are just a matter of check. I haven't even used tooling, but it doesn't matter because it's just a check mark. Now that one actually wants you to get some industrial TNT, which we will end up needing to do. But yeah, see, like this whole this whole quest page is basically just open, click, complete it, done, yada yada yada. But yeah, so there are a couple in here that we'll still need to go back and do, like the implosion compressor. We've not really needed it throughout this entire thing, but once we get into the extreme and try to get to the nuclear reactor, you're going to need it for the nuclear alloy plates. So that being said, we're also fairly close to the grab a chest plate, which is, I mean, obviously what every mod pack's goal pretty much is, which is create a flight. Like, we're all like, yeah, I want a lot of power and I want a cool storage system, but we all know that what we all really, really want is create a flight that actually isn't create a flight. You know, you don't want to just go in there day one and be able to fly around, but you do want to be able to do it. At least I do in most mod packs, if not all of them. Now, that being said, there is a diesel jetpack that we never made, but it's, I mean, honestly, the recipe's not too bad for it. I'm not sure what it, I mean, I assume it runs on diesel, obviously. But yeah, we just never even tried this out. So maybe we try that out today because, well, ladies and gentlemen, diesel is exactly what we got ourselves into, primarily because we went through and did the whole stainless steel drill in an old drilling rig. Now this is the process. This is a bit of a long one, and I'll be going through well, basically all of it with you because that was my intentions. Is we could do this together, and it might take 2 episodes because there's a lot here. This is just one side section, and this is another one, and this is another one. So the setup for this and really everything that went into getting this all working, understanding it, making sure that it's going to continuously run, right? So we don't run out of fuel and whatnot. It was certainly a tricky one, and one that I didn't want to try and do on camera and be like, well, hold up, let me read this. Well, hold up, you know. So I went ahead and did it all, understand it, I think. Minus this whole system back here, which I will get into later, but let's start with the system that I know and, you know, I basically have working. So stainless steel drill, once we get access to this, which we did in I think it was the last episode, right? Right here. Digital circuits, that's primarily what it's all about. And annealed copper wire. Did we do annealed copper wire last time? I'm pretty sure, but just in case we did not, essentially the only thing you need in order to get annealed copper is it's actually pretty simple. So you're looking for a annealed copper hot ingot, and you can just put copper dust and oxygen into an EBF. We already have access to oxygen from electrolyzing water over here. It gives us hydrogen and oxygen. So yeah, you just throw that into your EBF with some copper dust and you're good to go. This setup that's on there right now is not the same. That's argon going in there, and I'll explain, of course, why that is the way it is later on. So yes, as soon as you get access to the digital circuit, then you get access to stainless steel drill, and that's pretty much all you need to get rocking and rolling down this quest line. Now, I went through and did the pressurizer and all this stuff, and as I said, we'll get into this here in just a bit, but for the time being, we're going to follow through this whole process right here. All of these circles, because it's very complicated. Whenever I first got into this pack and we started looking at this, I went through this whole process just going through the recipes, not even realizing that they had it all drawn out. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of as complicated as what it seems like. And we're even going all the way to boosted diesel. So if you're looking for a little bit extra power, don't worry, we don't just stop at diesel. I figured, you know what, we're doing all this headache anyways. Let's push through it and get the real meat and potatoes of it. So to start you out with, you'll need an oil drilling rig. Now, we never built one of these, but it actually is mentioned in the quest book right here, Time for Freedom. So it's very early in on the last quest page that we were actually on. We just never did it. You can use aluminum to get some violent mix, which can be processed and refined into crude oil, which can then further go into diesel. But you know, we already had power up and running. It was not really a big thing. And so we just waited to get shale oil. Shale, am I saying that right? Essentially, you put stainless steel drills in, which once you have one and you have EMC, then you can just duplicate it infinitely, right? That's kind of the whole point of this. Also, this seems to be fixed where now you don't have to do the whole back out, come back in, back out, come back in kind of thing. So yeah, if you want stainless steel, you just do a little shift click, throw them in, you're good to go. But yeah, you'll see that it is processing shale oil. It's going a little slow, but to be completely honest, this stays filled up, so I guess we don't really have to care about it all too much, right? As long as the system keeps pumping it out, we're good to go. Now this will need some energy input, and of course, make sure anytime you're building these machines, what I like to always do is just place down the base machine first. I should really have a base machine, but maybe we'll get around to building one today. I don't want to break this because it's already doing its whole thing, but make sure you have your wrench out anytime you go to build a modern industrialization machine, multi-block machine, because it's gonna really help you out as far as where to place stuff. Which, you know, they really should mention something about that. Maybe they did. Maybe they've updated and revised the quest pack, or you know, the little questing this whole interface, because it's definitely changed since I started playing the mod pack. Like, we've been through a couple of updates, which thank goodness. I almost had a mod pack breaking bug with platinum. But anyway, so you're gonna take your shale oil, you're gonna output it into we're gonna get into a distillation tower. Now, the distillation tower, I also kind of waited on this because it was like, yeah, you can use one distillery to do the things you want, but you only get one output, and it's really, I mean, some things you know you just don't need immediately, so why not wait for the better version of it, essentially. So a lot of the side quests in this, I sort of ignore until they're like, oh no, you need that, and then it's like, okay, well, I'll go back and build one because I mean, you're kind of shoving me in that direction anyways. um okay, that's with helium. I was like, wow, there's one that I did not get. But any hoosers, so we're going into the distillation tower again. Just follow your quest book here. It is good about you. You only need to generally build half of all of these multi-block machines, because, well, a little bit over half. But then they end up giving you the rest of the materials you kind of need. I don't think. Well, they put an HV energy input on this distillation tower, and I'm just here to tell you, I don't think you need that. Can it process stuff quicker? I mean, sure, maybe. I mean, absolutely. There is no maybe. It absolutely will process quicker, but there's just no need for that much of a power drain. Everything here is powered using either medium voltage or low voltage. So, like our chemical reactors here, they can only use low voltage. So there's no need to go too high up if you're just gonna have to come right back down, and it's just sort of wasting energy. Anyways, shale oil, we can see right here, ends up turning into helium, sulfuric crude oil, and sulfuric naphtha. I'm not going to lie, this whole sulfuric processing bit, it's a wee bit annoying. But it's okay. It's all right, I suppose. So what you're going to get as a byproduct is you're going to get sulfuric acid, which we send into a dim tank or a dimensional tank. I know we got into this last time, and it's just wasn't really being abundantly used. So the dim tank, or really the dimensional storage mod, if you just type in @dim, then you get it to pull up. You have chest and tanks available, and that's essentially it. You also have a dimensional tablet, which says that's how you bind to a dim chest. I've not had to use it yet, and I've used the dim chest. Maybe it's because I didn't change anything about it. I just used like baseline frequency or whatever the heck they call it in this mod, right? And it worked perfectly fine. So I don't know. Maybe we'll use the tablet later on. I did already make one. It's just I've not ever had to really use it. So, anyways, that is that. Whenever you get into it, whenever you get into the ability of being able to teleport items and stuff around, which I believe it's stainless steel. That's really the hiccup here. So yeah, because we already had the engineering circuit, Redstonia, and stainless steel we had in the last episode. So as I said, we kind of already been there. Anyways, going on to processing, we have up in the top one, this is the naphtha, this is the crude oil, and this is the helium. I've not started using the helium, but it does say that we'll need it later on for cooling units or something like that. Hold on. All right, so anyways, let's go through the order that I actually did it in, because I believe I worked on this branch here first. So essentially we have the oils coming out the back here, or whatever you want to call them. So naphtha goes into a jumbo tank. And my thinking here is this way we have a bit of a buffer. And these jumbo tanks, they're very tiny. They can hold 1,000 buckets. They're a fantastic buffer, in my opinion. Now you'll notice the crude oil one is empty, and this one is all the way filled up. It's because we're constantly using crude oil, excuse me, for our power source nowadays. So, you know, it's honestly a route that I probably should have done sooner. I will admit that going through the distillation and all that probably would have been I don't know about a time saver as far as power goes, but it would have been more fuel efficient. And for those of you that appreciate that, I guess that's the route for you. Anyways, so basically what we do is we take the naphtha and we throw it through a chemical reactor with steam, because you really need to get steam cracked naphtha. Naphtha itself, I mean, you can make some lubricant with it, I suppose, but it's not really going to do all that much. But steam cracked naphtha, you can put back into another distillation tower. I know, gets a little confusing. Make sure it has at least 8 on its output, right? Because it has maximum 8 outputs, and you're going to want this ethylbenzene because it saves you from having to take this ethylene and this benzene and always combine it and always need it for that purpose, which is good because you'll need the ethylene later on for something else. So yes, you'll get from distilling this steam cracked naphtha, and the way the distillation tower works is it's essentially the same setup. So this is exactly like this, just more. Does that make sense? And what you'll do is you'll right click on the distillation tower. You'll come here to select multi-block shape, and you can change the height of it. Again, I'm not going to, because if I do, it'll interrupt this process and we'll go back to base efficiency, which only has a 3 of 3 on efficiency, but still, we'll leave that as is. And I believe the inside is the titanium, not titanium, sorry, stainless. What am I doing at? They're these blocks right here, the stainless steel pipe machine casing, which they're not bad to make. So, yeah, this is the steam cracked naphtha that goes into here. It works really, really well. You can see all the empties on there, and then you'll know like everything is set up properly, right? Whenever you see all the empties, you're good to go. And then essentially you just want to pull everything out of the machine, right? Pull each fluid out. And again, we go back to the jumbo tanks. They're just really, really efficient as far as space goes. If you take a look here, it's 1,000 buckets, and it's literally just 4 titanium plates. That's the real cost is 4 titanium plates, because your singularity, you can EMC iron, you can EMC glass. It's free. It's literally free. um, that seems like just a straight worse upgrade of the recipe. But anyways, and they're really good, like I said, as acting as a buffer system for your whole setup. And obviously some of these we need to start using or deleting, because we have a whole lot of butadiene up there. Propane's starting to build up. Methane obviously is starting to build up. Anyway, so I pretty much just worked this from the bottom up. That was kind of my like, hey, let's keep it simple. Let's not try and do like, oh, I'll use this one up there and this one in the middle, and they'll go that way and yada yada yada. So I gave myself a lot of room. If you think about it, there's sort of 3 different directions you can go from here, right? You can go that way, you can go that way, and you can go this way. Now, I still plan on using the propane in the future. We'll need it for industrial TNT. So we're going to go this way with the propane, but I wanted something that was sort of less complicated, and I'm hoping that'll be less complicated because we have less space this way. Like we might have to go forward and then turn a little bit. So anyways, let's just get right into what we're doing here. So methane. Well, can I not? I can't like access the gas from there. Okay, well, let's just look it up then. What are we using methane for? Why do we need it? Why do we care about it? Well, methane can actually be turned into acetylene. Now, acetylene, we are actually already getting from this machine. That's what this second output is, right? So you get methane from the first one, you get acetylene from the second one. And one thing that might help me on doing this is if I just save the steam cracked naphtha so I can go through it bit by bit. So methane, you get 150. Acetylene, you only get 50. But you can turn this 150 methane into 200 acetylene. And yeah, it's at a 1-to-1 ratio. So why? I'm not really sure. Maybe it's for science sake as far as being accurate and whatnot. So essentially what I've done here is I took another electric blast furnace. It only has to be Carpo nickel, so you don't have to worry about, doing a canthanol or can I don't know what it's called, but the yellow one. So it's really basic, really simple there. This is saying active. It might be because this is all filled up. Yeah, it is. So essentially it's pumping out of here. We're just combining it with the stuff from over here, so that way we have one solid stream, right, of acetylene. Because after that, if you follow through your quest book, when you get to sulfuric naphtha, cracked naphtha, over here you'll see acetylene from methane, and then you need to combine that to make vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is right here. Now, you'll oftentimes see that I have a bucket of the liquid that I was trying to make, and that's because whenever I would use the fluid pipes, whenever you're right-clicking with the wrench, it goes out. Oh, shit. It goes in and out, and then out. You see? So what ends up happening is well, shit, kind of like what I just did there, and I wasn't expecting it to do all 24,000 millibuckets immediately. Anyways, so it essentially pulls the fluid out and then puts it back into the machine to where I end up with this, where the end result is also in the machine. So, all right, that'll just take some methane down for us. Anyways, then you'll need to take the vinyl chloride and you'll want to combine it with some lead. Well, I guess I need some more lead dust. Gotta be a little bit closer. Actually, you know what? I think I've taken a lot out of the system. Let's just go get some from over here. Because again, we already have lead and antimony. Again, I don't know if I'm saying that one right. But we already have plenty of it over there. So let's use what we have to our disposal. And I guess power is another thing we'll need to go through in this video because it is something that I've updated. All right, so yeah. You put in lead tiny dust, which I still do manually. It's because you can get like 1,000 of it at once easily. You know, I still have more in here that we didn't even get to get into. So it's, again, some things you need to automate, some things you just don't. So chemical reactor, you put the vinyl chloride, you put the lead tiny dust, you're getting polyvinyl chloride. Hallelujah. That's the end result. That's all you needed from that section. Now you will need it later, right? Whenever you're making your processing unit boards. Polyvinyl chloride is the fluid that sort of combines the physical agents, if you will. But yeah, it's not that bad of a recipe once you get to looking at it, because the digital circuits, I mean, we already set up this polyethylene station over there to essentially make this, which is the exact same sort of setup. You see, you have cables, a battery, plate or a board, whatever you want to call it, and then plates. And then you turn around and it's just the same sort of ordeal here. So maybe you want to make an automation that makes batteries automatically just by putting in redstone or cadmium. I don't know how to say this dust. I'm not gonna lie. The yellow dust. Cadmium. Cadmium. Is it cadmium? That just sounds like I'm throwing in extra syllables. You know what I mean? Anyways, so yeah, polyvinyl chloride is the end result from these two bottom fluids. That's what you're looking for. Once you get there, fucking save it up. We'll use it later. Because now you need to go process all the rest of everything else. Now, the acetylene will need some hydrochloric acid, but you already made hydrochloric acid earlier in the series. Also, if you didn't, which really I think you have to, because you need salt and all that set up on the second oil drilling rig over there. So we have hydrochloric acid here. Let's just go look at the setup. It is right here. So chemical reactor with chlorine, hydrogen, it'll get you hydrochloric acid. We're pumping that out and into our dimensional tank. How you get this hydrochloric acid is by electrolyzing salt, and it'll give you chlorine, which you can pump forward into your recipe there. And then you need hydrochloric acid for kind of a lot of stuff, so just make sure you have a dim tank for it. And that's really the biggest use for these, is being able to say, oh, you know what, I need sulfuric acid over here. Let me just go pull a tank instead of having to run a pipe from way the fuck over there to way over here. Sorry, excuse my French. Anyway, so that side's done. Some of this is hard to access. I wish I'd made all the pipes a little bit taller, but this was the easiest way for me to build them. Does that make sense? Because you're just looking straight in front of you and click, 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 instead of looking up and trying to be like, oh, here's this tiny little dot, let me try and hit it. Any hosers, after that we were coming up to our third fluid, ethylene, which I think is kind of best explained in the form of saying you need ethylbenzene right here. Right? It's part of, just know it's part of the process from later on. Well, this tank gives you ethylene and, oh, that's butadiene, that's propene, benzene. So it actually gives you the two components needed to make the 8th component up there, which is ethylbenzene. So a little weird, but it gives you the ethylbenzene, and then it also gives you benzene and ethylene. So basically what it's telling you to do with those two is, well, I'm sure as your imagination can guess, it says combine them. Combine them with a little bit of hydrochloric acid and you get ethylbenzene. So that is essentially what we're doing with our ethylene here. Now it is going into another process. You'll notice right here. It's going on over into this chemical reactor to make us some ethanol, because you'll need ethanol, well, with acrylic acid. And our other method for making ethanol is horribly, ridiculously slow, right? We use a distillery and we get 10 millibuckets of ethanol every 40 seconds. So this is how we were using it before to sort of get, the polyethylene. But this is really, really slow, especially when compared to this takes 7 seconds. All right. And the only thing that goes in here is ethylene, which, like I just said, is being outputted from this machine, water, and sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid we already have in a tub. Water we now have in a tub. And by tub, I just mean dimensional tank. But, you know, if I just keep saying the same words throughout the entire video, I'm going to get really... It's going to get to the point where I'm like, is that really a word? Am I saying that properly? But a lot of this setup isn't necessarily so much difficult in being like, oh, let me read this. Oh, that goes into there? Okay, well, cool. Let me fluid pipe it up. Um, essentially, where a lot of the confusion and distraught comes in is from being like, okay, well, let me use a colored pipe here with this pipe so I can have them both send in from the same direction because all the other directions are kind of already fucking taken. Now, the ethylene we actually have splitting off here, and you'll notice that this one actually have as a higher priority because we tend to run out of ethanol before we run out of this ethylbenzene, and part of the reason for that is we're already making ethylbenzene in the system. So we don't need to make it in the system plus make it ourselves because we just get backed up on the ethylene and the benzene and the ethylbenzene way too fast. Sorry, just knocked a bottle over on my desk here. Stay still. Like a bottle of Dr. Pepper. Anyways, oh shucks. I've done this before. It's not a situation I like to be in. Now we gotta go down. And in case you didn't know, I run the power underneath the ground over here because it's easier than running it all out of the top, especially when out of the top we have fluid being pumped, right? So let's get back around this contraption because I'm a silly willy and made it really, really hard to run around my own shit here. Don't, oh, fuck me. You know what? We're not doing that again. Don't build like me. Put your pipes at any other level besides directly in front of your fucking face, all right? So, ethylbenzene, we're making it here. We're combining ethylene and benzene, which I know I said I wasn't going to be jumping around, but you really can't avoid this jump. So you're going from the third fluid up to the 1, 2, 3, is that 6th fluid? But essentially you're just going to take those, throw them in, get some hydrochloric acid, throw it in, and then you're going to be on over here to needing styrene because you need styrene. You need styrene plus butadiene to make styrene butadiene, and you need this to make the rubber. You know, we've been through this as far as why we need each one into the next thing. But looking at the recipe, all you need is some ethylbenzene. Cool, we just got that. Steam. I mean, this has been our power source for the past 13 episodes. A little funny that we're changing it now as we're nearing the end, but steam you should have plenty of. And it should be fairly accessible. Like these are things that you should have by now. Hydrogen, I go back and forth on this, but I really feel like we need a better, oh, excuse me. I feel like we need a better hydrogen producing system. Because we use hydrogen in just about everything. You use hydrogen for distilling or for separating the sulfur from that stuff over there. You use hydrogen here. It's like it's used a lot. Anyways, so again, if I can manually do it, I'm going to manually do it. We have iron dust that is being kicked off from our first drill setup over there, right? So just go grab you a couple thousand, pull them back over here, and slap them in a diamond barrel. This is why I always try to have a buffer of items because you never know when you're going to be like, oh man, I need iron dust and I'm producing it, but then I'm using it as soon as I'm producing it. Always, if you're going through the trouble of setting up automation, set up a little chest to your side for each individual material that's being created in the process and just give it a little bit of a small buffer. 8,000 is a little bit more than a small buffer. But me, I get paranoid because I don't want to be like, well, I need 500 iron dust, but I'm only saving 64. Okay, well that doesn't really help you, does it? Anyways, so you put in hydrogen, steam, ethylbenzene, iron dust. It seems like a rather complicated recipe, but all this stuff we already have access to, and most of it is fairly easily accessible. That'll give you your styrene, which you can throw together with your butadiene. Butadiene is the next fluid that we get from this. Well, no, it's propene. My goodness, they really should have just at least done them in order, you know what I mean, as far as which ones you needed. But I guess just specifically for the mod pack, they didn't know, or maybe they do it as scientifically accurate as possible. I don't know. I'm not a scientist or a chemist. Far from either of those, really. Anyways, so we have butadiene that goes into a tank, and it's just being processed up. So, like I said, it seems very complicated in the beginning. And some of the fluids are a little complicated because you got to do some double processing or whatever it is. But then sometimes it's just like, hey, you know that fluid I gave you? Put it into this machine. All right, you're done. So we ignore the styrene butadiene right here. Again, same thing. I kind of pumped it back into its own system, and that makes it look a little more complex or complicated than what it should be. And this should not be in your system. However, it's also nice to see that it won't mess it up. Having this here does absolutely nothing to you. It'll still run through, yada, yada, yada. So just kind of ignore it. All of this over here is also... there's some thunder going on. All this all over here is also powered just with 10 cables or low voltage, whatever form you use for that. It might be copper or whatever. So it's excuse me. It isn't very costly on your network either. Like we're using 90 right now. That's for most of this, I would assume. 84, 90, 90. Okay, so yeah, let's say these two should be on the same wavelength kind of thing. That one. These two are on two separate ones. Anyways, so you may want to split it up to have like two separate low network tier cables, whatever you want to call them. I have a little medium to low voltage box right there, and that's where my two splits comes in. So you see one's coming this way, and one goes off in this direction. Anyways, we need to get some more for this top barrel. So you have your styrene butadiene because you threw it into a chemical reactor. After that, you'll throw it into another chemical reactor with lead or... I don't have any over there. Actually, you know what? It'd probably be easier if I go here. Butadiene, styrene butadiene. So you'll see this kind of a lot in recipes. Chromium tiny dust and lead tiny dust that allows you to turn your material into something else. Typically, I go for the lead tiny dust one just because it's like, well, lead's a bit more accessible and a bit more infinite. Chromium, we are processing and producing it automatically, infinitely. But it just takes a little bit longer to get to. However, for this recipe, I did want more styrene butadiene rubber per, pump through. So I have been using the chromium tiny dust, but now that we have a fair amount of it, honestly, I'm probably going to go to the lead tiny dust just because it's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. But if you're interested in seeing the rest of these, so there's acrylic glue, nylon, polyethylene, polyvinyl chloride, and the rubber. Like I said, quite a few of these that are used with the chromium tiny dust, so could be an important thing if you want to automate it, feel justified. If not, if you just want to use lead for all of them like me, again, that's okay. Feel justified. So yeah, and then that's the end result here. Styrene butadiene rubber. That's what we were looking for. That's the money shot. It is going into a dimensional tank because we're using it elsewhere. And is that it? I think so, because we got the ethylbenzene, we got all this middle part with the butadiene, ethylene, and methane. Yeah. So that's essentially it for the naphtha. Not that bad, right? I mean, it looks worse. Well, maybe it either looks worse or it looks way better in my setup. If you're like me and you understand sort of simplistic overviewing concepts or conceptualizations, then this probably makes more sense for you. Some people, they have their whole factory like chemical reactor here and then another one here and then the end result there, and you're like, well, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, well, it's easy. I'm using this machine in the back to pull 3 fluids from here, put them there, put 2 there, put 1 over there. And then you're like, oh, my mind can't draw the connections. You know what I mean? So sometimes I find when doing these larger projects to literally give yourself enough space to look at it and tell what's going on. If you can't tell that this one goes into that one with the help of the arrows and just sort of the general flow state of everything, maybe the mod pack's just a little too complicated for you, and that's okay. Go play a more simpler. Maybe I should go play a more simpler. Go play a more simple mod pack and be okay with it. You know what I mean? You don't always have to do the most complicated shit in the world, and that's what I continuously try and tell myself in this mod pack every day. So if you got to go big with it, if you got to go spaced out, if you got to go rather simple, then do it. You know what I mean? You don't have to use laser IO for everything and be like, well, it's super efficient and it gets things done super fast. Well, you don't always need speed. Sometimes you just need accuracy. What do they say? Slow is quick, or slow is steady, steady is quick. Anyways, I don't want to get on a soapbox here. So that is the naphtha being processed, right? We did it. Sent it all the way through. We did it together. Yada, 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 yada. No, wait. Oh, no, this being used for over here. Okay, well, then we'll get into this. So after that, we have the oil, because that is the other result from this here. What? Okay, there we go. So shale oil, then it goes into sulfuric crude oil. So essentially you do the same thing. You'll combine it with hydrogen to get yourself crude oil and sulfuric acid. And so like I said, hydrogen, this stuff right here, our system can hold 69 buckets, and that wasn't planned, ladies and gentlemen. That just means it was pure fate for it to work out perfectly. So yeah, you just put it in here, it combines together, you output your sulfuric acid, and the crude oil is coming into here, but it's immediately being processed and ran through. Actually, this has 5 buckets in it. This is finally starting to fill up. We're at 1 bucket now, which means, I mean, obviously we're going to have to dump it soon. For the large majority, if you want an easy-ish, I say easy-ish because, I mean, you know, I don't like to assume it's easy for everyone. But an easy-ish dump system while also having a buffer or a backup storage, however you want to call it. I go for this setup right here on fluids. So right here, we're doing the sulfuric, naphtha, hydrogen, sulfuric acid, yada, yada, yada. Essentially, we have the naphtha coming out, and then we have 1 fluid pipe going in with a priority of 1, and we have 1 fluid pipe coming over here with a priority of 0. This one is going into a fluid trash can. But with our priorities, make sure you set your priorities before you put that trash can down. It is very important. With our priorities set the way that they are, this will never throw anything in the garbage as long as this tank has space in it. Essentially, when this tank fills up, it will start throwing the fluid into the garbage. You may be saying, Chance, that's kind of wasteful. I agree with you. We definitely should, like, maybe process it more, you know, but you don't need to for anything that we're currently doing. So just trash it. All right. You don't need everything always. And the reason for that is we need crude oil, obviously, a lot more than what we need the naphtha. And now we're back out of crude oil. So it's a slow process of gaining a buffer on that one, but it's happening. But yeah, so we need a lot more crude oil than we do naphtha. And so essentially what would end up happening is you would back it all the way up into this advanced fluid output hatch, and then the machine will stop. You won't get any more helium. You won't get any more crude oil. And so just from having too much of this one, your whole system shuts down. And you'll be like, oh, why is it not working? You'll be looking all around and everything will be set up correctly. So yeah, just make sure you have an output essentially for your naphtha, because you're going to go through more crude oil, at least if you decide to use it for your power, than what you will naphtha. And if not, then make sure you're destroying your crude oil, because more than likely you'll go through naphtha faster. And then helium, I've just not used it all, so it's same setup though, priority up higher value than this priority. And so it'll fill up the tank, and then once it gets done filling up the tank, everything will go into the trash. All right, so crude oil. What do we need with crude oil? Well, we would just take it, we send it over into another distillation tower. When they give you stuff, they really just like to kick you full force into it. So we have 1, 2, 3 distillation towers immediately. But what this is going to do is give you sulfuric light fuel, sulfuric heavy fuel, because everything apparently is sulfuric, and sulfuric naphtha back again. Ladies, it's back again. So yeah, just same process. Hydrogen with your heavy fuel, and it'll give you basic heavy fuels. Hydrogen with your light fuel, it'll give you light fuel. Sulfuric acid is just going straight in the fucking dumpster now, because let's be real, we have enough of it. All right. And the naphtha, we're not even actually producing. Like it says, it gives you sulfuric naphtha. I only have a distillation tower that is too tall. The reason I did this, and an easy way for you to know where stuff's going to come out, is this setup here. This will be what gives you first, this will be what it gives you second, and this will be what it gives you third. I don't want any more sulfuric naphtha. I'm literally already throwing that stuff in the garbage. So, you know, don't build one that's that high, and then you just won't be given naphtha. This one is giving us the sulfuric heavy fuel. This one is giving us the sulfuric light fuel. So just build a 2 tall one instead of a 3 tall. Problem solved. So yeah, then you turn it into the regular fuel version of itself by adding hydrogen, because hydrogen is added to everything plus then some. And then you just throw the light fuel and the heavy fuel in together, and that gives you diesel. Diesel is also very, very good at fueling things. So from 1,000 heavy fuel and 5,000 light fuel, you get 6,000 diesel. This is like the one base recipe, or 6 buckets, 6,000 millibuckets. I like to do it by millibuckets because it works out better with when you're trying to figure out energy per tick. So essentially you get 6,000 buckets, or 6,000, sorry, 6,000 millibuckets of diesel from that recipe right there, right? Combining 1 and 5. And from each millibucket, right? From each millibucket of diesel, you get 400 EU. So if we're getting 6,000 from each recipe as a whole, right? Every time we process that through that 30 seconds, we get 6,000 millibuckets. And for each millibucket, we get 400 EU. Then that gives us 2.4 million energy off of one recipe. That is crazy, right? EU per millibucket. You're getting 400, you're getting 6,000 for the whole thing. Like that's nuts. That's a lot of energy. And it's much better, far better. Like we'll go over there in a second. I'll do the calculations for you, and it'll just, the numbers don't make sense, Mason. They just don't make sense. So, anyways, I digress. We have our electric mixer. It's making diesel. It's pumping it into a buffer. And then this diesel, I figured, you know what, let's go ahead and power our machines with it. Like I said, 2.4 million every time this this machine processes through. Yeah, absolutely. It's not overclocked because everything is kind of backed up on diesel, so it doesn't run constantly. But when it was running constantly, you have to remember this thing, it just goes even quicker. So in order to get diesel, it says 30 seconds, but if you overclock this to be twice as fast, then it's only going to take you 15 seconds. And then obviously your numbers go way, way up. So We have our diesel going through. It's powering these four. We have boosted diesel, which is powering these four. And honestly, we could probably power everything with boosted diesel. Because while diesel is nice and it gives you 400 EU per tick, boosted diesel, not force infused, but boosted diesel gives you 800 millibuckets per, or 800 EU per millibucket. So it's literally doubling it. And so that's why I figured, you know what, let's go ahead and set up this process here because it's not really a big bad process. You throw in diesel, you throw in, I believe this is ethanol, diethyl ether, sorry. I don't know why I thought this was ethanol. Anyways, so you throw in your diesel, you throw in diethyl ether, and then you get your boosted diesel. Diethyl ether, not too complicated to make here. So you'll take your propene, it'll go into a chemical reactor with ethylene. Like I said from earlier, we needed the ethylene. What? Do I need ethylene in this? Is this one of those things? Yeah, okay. All right. This is one of those things where I accidentally put in the wrong fluid. I was like, I don't think I need ethylene over here. Mistakes happen. Anyways, so you need propene and oxygen, which you can get oxygen from, you know, your whole electrolyzing water earlier. Or centrifuging it? I don't know. Sorry, big yawn. And anyways, that'll give you acrylic acid. Then you take the acrylic acid and you combine it with ethanol. You might need water here. No, I think you produce water here. So you don't need water here either. You got to be careful looking at my my recipes here. So yeah, ethanol, acrylic acid will give you diethyl ether. We already know how to make ethanol. I already went through that whole process, right? And that's essentially what's going in here. So we're using the ethylene right here to create ethanol using sulfuric acid, water, and ethylene, which obviously the sulfuric acid and the water we're already using by the tons of, and we should already have a system in place. This is one thing that I don't get. Our sulfuric acid tank never runs out, but sometimes it says it's less than full. But I know that it should never be less than full with how much we're pumping back into this system. So it just seems a little strange to me. But anyways, I digress. From there, we have, backing up into a cable. We have our chemical reactor, which gives us our diethyl ether. And then that's pretty much the holdup for creating boosted diesel. Now, the nice thing is every time we create this recipe, every time it runs through here, and honestly, this overclock should be a bit higher, but maybe I fucked up the system because it. No. Oh, are we having to wait on ethanol every single time? Yeah. So why is this not max overclocked then? What are you having to wait on? Ethylene? Oh, which all comes from how quickly we're getting it processed through there because we actually are completely out of ethylene, which is kind of nice. But anyways, no need to hoot or holler over that. It's perfectly fine. If, like I said, if you wanted to speed up your oil drilling process and rig, you could use a high voltage wire over there and you could increase the outputs and all that kind of stuff. We aren't needing it. So boosted diesel, from this diesel plus diethyl ether recipe, you get 1200 millibuckets, which, like I said, you get 800 EU per 800 EU per millibucket. So that's not as much as the 6,000, if I'm being honest with you. 800 times 1200 is only 960,000, so literally less than half as far as what you're getting per output here, but you're getting it at twice the speed because the other one was 30 seconds. This is 15 seconds. So it's really closer to like 1.92. Okay, so you're still about 500,000 EU off, even on that conversion of getting this twice as fast as what you get the other stuff, right? It seems a little bad, but overall, as long as you're producing this fast enough, you're still getting more energy per millibucket, you know what I mean? Just baseline. So it's fine, and it definitely powers things. And then the way it powers it is just by hardly using any boosted diesel whatsoever. And again, I could probably use the boosted diesel for all 8 of these tanks, but I think having them split to where 4 are being run on diesel and 4 are being run on boosted diesel is a good way to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. That being said, we're not using all this energy anyways. We have 1.5K energy total being output through our entire facility. I went way overkill with this. This is 8 high voltage diesel generators. Now, diesel generators produce typically twice as much energy as their steam counterpart. So for the low diesel, you have 64. For the medium, you have 256. And for the high, you have 1024. The one thing I will say is, even though this only produces 1024 EU per tick, you still cannot just pull Electrum cable straight out of it, because that is a medium voltage cable. So you need a high voltage cable like the aluminum. If you want to set up like this, I do recommend either doing it in a 4-prong or an 8-prong, or maybe not an 8-prong, but just a double prong like what you see here, because you'll save yourselves a lot on aluminum cables just by trying to be smart with, you know, various power setups and whatnot. So we have all that going in. It's producing, like I said, 1.5K power, because this is now the main line of power for us in the base. I kept saying I wanted to centralize our power and then be able to segment it a bit better, and that's exactly what we did in between these episodes, and I'll go through that in just a bit. But that's all the diesel gone through, and again, it may seem complicated, but whenever any of you have the machines laid out in a much larger fashion where you can see clearly what's going where, I personally find it easier for me to keep track of everything. Now, over here was me testing the diesel generators. Could we actually supply this and keep it running and all that? So these 2 diesel generators really, they're really not needed. They're using 240 network energy, and it's to, I guess, just help power this little system back here. Yeah, it's like primarily for powering this right here. So we could get rid of these. They're completely not needed. The diesel is not going to hurt the system if I have it there or if I don't. So, and then that's it for this big machine. That you did it. You conquered the beast. It did take, well, damn near an hour with my explanation of it. But that's okay, because hopefully now you better understand this, and hopefully, above all, it's not as fearful to you, or you're not as fearful of it, rather. It's not as scary of a task or an achievement now that you have a video to sort of step you through each individual machine and how to set it up and yada, yada, yada. If you have any questions about any of these processes, put it down in the comments. And my recommendation, put it down in the comments as soon as you have the question, because otherwise you're probably going to forget, and then you'll just eventually end up quitting the mod pack that you probably already put a couple 100 hours into, if you're anything like me. So yeah, this is a quick little setup that I'll go through just because it doesn't require much explanation, and it's one that we kind of already had, but we were doing it a bit more manual, and that is doping our silicone plates. You're going to want to probably set up something similar. So I'll run through this really, really quick. Essentially, in the barrel over here, much like in the barrel for, I can't remember which machine setup it is. It's one of those over there. But we're just using the memory slot, right? Select all slots once they're filled up to make sure that we have the proper materials coming in here. And then we're just running through making silicone. So we have this recipe locked in. We're pulling nether quartz, which is EMCable, search quartz, which is EMCable, and sand, which is EMCable, all of which have been set up on the same system back at the base. If you want to know what's going on there, just go back a couple episodes. Then we have the steel macerator, which is breaking down the quartz. It's breaking down the certs. It's going into a mixer. We're getting out our dust. The dust comes over into a furnace. The furnace then sends it out and presses it into a plate. And then the plate comes into this barrel, which either comes over here or goes down below. And essentially, we do just have a laser IO set up in the back. And that's because there's a lot going on in this tiny little space, and I'm trying to round robin it. And I've not figured out a way to round robin using these modern industrialization pipes. So just by using laser IO, that's how I do most of my round robining, just as a heads up. And then essentially, I mean, we can make 1,300 plus 1,900 of these because that's the only limiting factor in this. Like I said, all of these base ingredients back here are EMCable, so we have infinite of. So yeah, it's just aluminum dust and antimony, or sorry, tiny dust for each of them. And this will keep you more than happily satisfied for all that you need right there, right? Now, I wanted to talk about this system because it just maybe one of y'all can explain it to me, but to me, it doesn't make any damn sense. Excuse me. Which, of course, I tried this system out before going on to the boosted diesel and all that, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Maybe it's because you have to have the highly advanced large steam boiler or whatever. But as far as I can tell, this system, maybe I'm missing something. So you have your pressurizers, and with this, you'll make your heavy water, right? And we've been through this, I believe, in the end of the last episode, and I was saying, like, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. So you put your heavy or your high pressure water, whatever, into your large steam boiler. From that, you'll get 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam, damn near immediately. So for 125 millibuckets of high pressure water, which maybe I should go ahead and pull this up since we're into this system now, high pressure water. So for this, right, for this recipe right here, it takes 60 seconds or 1 minute to turn your water into 125 millibuckets of high pressure water. Now that's fine because it means that every minute you're getting this process to run through, which means that this machine is producing 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam every minute, because it only takes what you give it, right? So if you give it 125, then it's going to process that at the barest minimum, which is 2 millibuckets of high pressure steam. So you put your high pressure water into your high pressure large steam boiler, and you get your 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam, and you send it through to be processed. This large steam turbine can process up to 16,000 EU per tick. And since it's a large steam turbine, it does it constantly. So once you start using power, it's constantly running, right? Well, now that's a problem because then that kind of means that you need to keep up with as much power as what it can produce. Otherwise, it's eventually going to try to overproduce, right? So you need enough fluid going in here to power 16,000 EU per tick. Let me just go ahead and tell you that's no easy task, especially when the initial energy transformation isn't even enough to pay for itself, let alone have excess to pay for this whole large steam turbine. So you get 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam every 60 seconds. And this is imagining you have one pressurizer. I went ahead and built a whole second one just because I was like, well, maybe I just don't have enough. I can go ahead and tell you right now, it's not because you don't have enough, all right? Systems just don't fucking work. I've even overclocked them. 32 advanced upgrades in here, which brought me down to about every 10 seconds, all right? That's how efficient that I got these pressurizers. Every 10 seconds, we were producing high pressure water, and it still was not anywhere near enough. So let's go back to one system doing this at a minute, right? Because that's baseline what we're looking at. And even if you use no overclockers, but you have your pressurizer running constantly, we'll say this is the optimal situation, because that is essentially what you would be, the state you would be in just baseline. So if you have 0 advanced upgrades and your pressurizer is running constantly, producing your water for this machine, it'll still overclock itself. It'll just stop at 64, I think is what it is, which essentially is half time. So, or maybe it's 128. Anyways, so you start getting high pressure water every 30 seconds. So we'll say every 30 seconds you get 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's nowhere near enough power for this. So every 30 seconds you're getting 2,000 millibuckets. This can use up to 16,000 EU per tick. I'm not sure, or it's actually, the steam is producing 8 EU per singular millibucket, right? Because the high pressure steam is 8 times as strong or 8 times as heavy as regular. So it'll tell you in here, oh, maybe not in there, maybe in here. The high pressure steam boiler can produce up to 2,000 millibuckets of steam. High pressure steam is worth 8 times more than regular steam, so each millibucket will produce 8 EU instead of just 1. Cool. So we're getting 8 EU per tick for our pressure steam, high pressure steam. Well, we just sent through 2,000 millibuckets, so we'll do 8 times 2,000, right? Because that's our power. So we're getting 16,000 EU per 30 seconds. We're getting 16,000 EU per 30 seconds, which is it's bad. It's really bad. If we divide that 16,000 by 30, we discover that we're getting 533 EU per second. Okay. And if we divide that by 20, because there's 20 ticks in a single second, you'll realize that you're getting 26 EU per tick. 26 for doing this whole process. And that's with your pressurizer at max force. No upgrades, but it's running. It's all the way capped out on efficiency. You haven't put any upgrades in it. It's making you 26 EU per tick. That's less than the initial machine way back here. This produces 32 EU per tick for steam. So it's extremely, it doesn't make any sense, essentially. For how long it takes for you to pressurize the water, it's not worth it. And maybe I'm missing something huge here. And then you'll say, well, Chance, they do tell you right on down, the heat exchanger, you can use your heat exchanger to cycle, quote unquote, your HP water, because you don't actually recover your HP water. You can use the heat exchanger to recover the HP water for another cycle. No, that's bullshit. You don't get the HP water. You just get water. If you read the next line here, it says, if you use the recipe that takes steam and HP water as inputs, it will output regular water and steam. Okay, well, that's not useful. Because if you take a look at the results of what you get, they want you to put in high pressure steam, right? Or was it high pressure water? Hold on. They want you to put in high pressure water into this heat exchanger. So if we take a look, high pressure water, high pressure water plus steam to give you high pressure steam. Well, now, instead of you producing this 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam from this immediately, you're taking the high pressure water and you're making it take 15 seconds to produce the same 2 buckets of high pressure steam. So it's just taking even longer now because you have a 15-second processing window after you produce the 125 high pressure water. So no matter what, 125 millibuckets of high pressure water is turning into 2,000 millibuckets of high pressure steam. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it over a 15-second course or immediately? Right? Because you can put your high pressure water in here and you can get 2,000, or you can put your high pressure water in here and you can get 2,000. But it's the same either which way. Exact same result. Now let's, and that's, I mean, obviously I don't have to tell you guys and gals that just doesn't make any sense. Why would you ever want to do it this way if it's going to take that 15-second delay every time that it has to process? You shouldn't. Now, let's say you flipped it around, because that's essentially what I was doing early on, and I think it makes a lot more sense to do it that way, because at least as an off-put, instead of getting just regular water, which is all that you get if you do it their way, is you just get water. You're not recycling high-pressure water. You're just recycling water, which if you don't have infinite water by this point, yeah, you might be having some larger problems at hand, honestly. So recycling water, boo, it does nothing for your system. You're not recycling HP water, you're just recycling water. A huge misleading fact there, which took me a lot of hours to like go through all the math and be like, you know what? At a net, this doesn't fucking work. And that's okay. But at least let me explain it to you guys and gals. That way you don't go through the same fucking headache that I went through. So let's say you flipped it around and you're putting high pressure steam into the system. So you put your high pressure water into this boiler. It gives you high pressure steam. You put that high pressure steam into this machine. Now, what you're going to do is also put water in, and it's going to give you high pressure water back. But it's also going to give you 16 buckets or 16,000 millibuckets of steam. Now, I can think of a lot more uses for having 16,000 millibuckets of steam as an off-put from this cycling system, as opposed to just having one bucket of water, right? So that's why if you're going to do this setup, I do at least recommend doing it this way, because essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take your high pressure water that this gives you, right? 2,000 high pressure steam is produced from 125 millibuckets high pressure water. So there is no net loss here. The only difference is you're choosing whether to trade 16,000 steam for 1 bucket of water, or 1 bucket of water for 16 millibuckets of steam, right? So it's like, which one do you want? Do you want 1 to 16, or do you want 16 to 1? Well, pretty easy math. You want 1 to 16. So it's going to give you high pressure water. You'll essentially take that high pressure water, send it right back into your fucking boiler, and it's going to cycle itself. It's always going to pay for itself, because 125 is going to produce 2,000. 2,000 in here is going to produce 125, which comes back in and just cycles back around. So if they're talking about that kind of recycle, then sure, but you explained it wrong and you used the wrong recipe, and it only produces 16 buckets of steam, and that's once every 15 seconds. Right? And that's just steam. That's not even high pressure steam. That's just regular steam. So every 15 seconds, you get enough steam to power this thing. So I guess if you did that process 15 times over, or if you overclocked this to be 15 times as fast, then you're getting into some real numbers. But again, you're not using high pressure steam to power this. You would just be using regular steam, and you would be using high pressure steam to loop through to give you high amounts of regular steam. So I'm not sure. I've done the math a million times over. It never works out. It never, ever pays for itself, or gets anywhere close to paying for this, or even comes laughably close to being energy that is needed or can run independently. So if somebody else knows how this system is supposed to be set up and understands it, by all means, let me know. But as far as everything they've explained in the guidebook and everything that I've followed, as far as their recipes, trying it their way, yeah, it does not work. And as a sheer proof of point, let's set this bad boy up here. So it's pulling 60, 70 EU per tick. Now it's gonna take quite a bit for this to sort of unclog itself, because it's backed up all the way to where this is filled up with high pressure water. These are all filled up with high pressure water. This is even filled up with high pressure water. So it will take quite a while for you to see this really drain from the system. But you see it's constantly running, and trust me when I say it will eventually run out, even on that 1 or 2 millibuckets there that it's pulling out. Maybe not on 1 or 2 millibuckets, but if you set it up to in the hundreds, you know what I mean, which honestly is not that fucking much, you're doomed. You're going to run out of power. I can almost guarantee it. This third pressurizer, because I didn't want to mess with the system and the setup or whatever, is actually running through and getting us liquid air. And that's done really, really simply just by throwing an item input hatch on it and air intake module, I guess, item, whatever you want to call it. It's not that hard to make, into the input slot. It won't ever use this up, I don't believe, so you can just leave it in there and it'll keep on processing through. So yeah, that is the liquid air, which you'll end up needing to get argon, which you'll need for processing over here. Because we, like I said, we went ahead and went all the way through this guidebook, or this section of it. So this was complicated, but we did it. This was complicated, but also kind of shitty. Especially when compared to like, do I want 26 EU per tick on this huge machine that I just set up, or do I want the fucking 2.4 million per 30 seconds or whatever it turned out to be? I mean, obviously, you want the 2.4 million, the fucking 16,000 or 2.4 million. That's the two numbers we're dealing with here. It's a little atrocious. Oh, and let's not forget the 16,000 is inefficient because it runs constantly, to whereas the 2.4 million, it stops as soon as it's not needed anymore. Okay, well, somebody definitely didn't want Steam to win here. So that's all gone through. The only thing I can think of really in this next little bit is the wafers and everything, but they're not that difficult. So I guess let's go look at platinum and all that, because we have this stainless steel quarry that's also set up, right? So you can have stainless steel in the old drilling rig. You can also have it in the quarry. So don't get confused by that. And then it's essentially the same setup as all the other ones. We have everything coming into here. We're not using titanium. Honestly, I should void it, but it just feels a little bad. We do use titanium, let me clarify, but I don't use this process, because if you want to take a titanium block and make it into titanium, you put it through the macerator, you get this stuff, and then you need this manganese sulfuric solution. You need 3 buckets of it combined with the titanium to get your titanium hot ingot and get 25 millibuckets, or 25,000, or 2,500, goodness me, millibuckets of manganese sulfuric solution, which you can then pump back into this machine, right? So you can just keep it going. That's really fucking annoying if you're asking me personally, because then you got to take this and go put it into a heat exchanger or vacuum freezer. That's a process and a half. That's a whole process. Given if we come literally like 2 seconds, 2 steps, whatever you're gonna call it, like right here to the side, 15 blocks away, we're producing tiny titanium dust, which of course can be combined into titanium dust, which just needs to go straight into the canthanol to your EPF. So yeah, I don't know. I will never process raw titanium because it's way too complicated comparative to just using an electrolyzer. Now tungsten, I think, is just sort of backing up in the system because it's backed up. It's backed all the way up. And that's because this process right here takes so long. 2 minutes. 2 minutes to compress this down. You would think it would be overclocked. I don't know why it's... Oh, it can't overclock as of having no upgrades. Maybe we should throw some upgrades in here. Get this baby rocking and rolling. Do we have any just off the rip? I don't really want to make any because that starts to become a whole process. I have 8 basics. How much extra is it? 16? Not a whole lot extra. But I mean, hey, if we can even take it down a little bit, I'll take it. I've just not really used tungsten yet, hence why we have so many nuggets. Anyway, so yeah, this is processing everything, and essentially just read what you need to do with it, right? So like the monzonite, whatever it's called, monzite. You need to put it into a centrifuge, and then you get your 3 with the tungsten. You just got to break it down, and then this is the nifty little thing. Like I said, using your tungsten to get tungsten nuggets is kind of ingenious, because then you can just turn these nuggets into an actual bar, Whereas if you look at how to turn regular tungsten dust into a bar, you have to turn it into the tiny dust, but then you have to compress it using this implosion compressor. Why not just use the electric compressor? Takes a little bit longer. We're not stressing it. And then last but not least is the platinum, which does have the complex whatever recipe with it. So you take raw platinum, which you get from, smashing it down just like everything else. Take your raw platinum. You combine that through with sulfuric acid. We have plenty of this in the system, so you should already have a dimensional tank ready for that. It'll give you the platinum sulfuric solution, which you can then combine through with some, I don't know, wait, maybe you just centrifuge it. Let's see. Yeah, you just centrifuge it. You just put it into the centrifuge. Then you get iridium tiny dust, which you will need, so hold on to that stuff. I know it's only at a 5% chance, but still make an item barrel that comes out of here because you will absolutely want this stuff in the future. Anyways, then you get your purified platinum sulfuric solution, which honestly just becomes a headache and a half as far as complication goes. And then from that, you can put it into the electrolyzer. You get your platinum tiny dust, which of course you can go and process from there. You also get some sulfuric acid as an offput, which I recommend just sending straight back into your system. So, easy enough? I hope so. I certainly hope so. And so that's pretty much everything that we've done. Excuse me. In between episodes, right? I explained that side. Well, I guess we didn't go through this, which is getting the random access memory, or RAM, as most people know it to be. I was like, why is this not automatically producing? Actually, you know what? Shit. Hold on. Because I want this to be this recipe, so let's lock it in, then send. Okay, so essentially what you need to make RAM is a chemical reactor that you fill with aluminum dust, we already have, antimony dust, we already have, argon, which we don't already have, but this is why we're making the liquid air. So you take liquid air, which we're getting from our pressurizer over there. I just went through all that. Put it into a centrifuge and you'll get oxygen, nitrogen, and argon. We don't need oxygen really. Nitrogen I've not found a use for, so we do have a buffer for it. And then argon, you get 35 millibuckets every 30 seconds. So really, really not a whole lot here, but it's enough to do what you need to do with it. And there's also no other way to get this stuff. So, I mean, you can go through this method, but I'm pretty sure you need argon to create cryofluid. Yes, you're not really creating argon through that method. You're just recycling it, and that is a true recycle, just so we're all clear. Anyway, so then you also need your styrene butadiene rubber. It's finally coming in handy, and this is the only thing that you really need it for. You can make some rubber sheets as well, or even throw it into the assembler to make some cables, but I recommend just making your random access memory and saving it for the good stuff. So this stuff actually becomes really important because you need it for the processing unit. Sure, yeah. But the whole reason I wanted the random access memory was so we could get the crafting units from Applied Energistics too. Now, I've not moved into auto crafting, but honestly, at how close we already are to the end of this pack, we may not even fucking use auto crafting. I've essentially went through and built entirely huge machines to do my quote-unquote auto crafting for me with the simple insertion of materials. So it's like, why would I want to go set up a whole nother auto crafting system that's basically just going to say, hey, send those materials over here and then take them back out when I'm so close to the end. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe you should have given us the auto crafting stuff earlier. Maybe it would have been broken. I don't know. This system is completely useless. Don't worry about it. It's not needed. Anyway, so we're getting our random access memory over there. Over here, we're creating our processing unit boards, which is essentially just taking our polyvinyl chloride from the big fucking experiment over there, and then we're combining it with everything that you see here, which should be everything you've already used before, digital boards and all that. But just in case you haven't, The battery is the exact same as all the other batteries. Just make sure you have annealed copper or any EV cable up here in the top, and then you have your dust in the middle. You'll be good to go. Annealed copper wire, we already know how to make this, and of course platinum plates just comes from smashing them in a compressor. So once you have, random access memory and you have the processing unit, all the rest of this is pretty accessible from previous notes. So we already had the digital circuit board. The memory management unit will need a bit more platinum involved with it because you need platinum fine wire. But this stuff's really easy to get, given you get 4 of them for 1 platinum wire. So no problemo there. Oh. Now the silicone wafers that that go into the memory management unit and go into the random access memory, you can get those by putting a monocrystalline silicone, whatever, into an electric cutting machine, which essentially you kind of already have this set up. It may or may not be electric, but all I've done is swap out our cutting machine over here for an electric one. So there you go. It's already getting the lubricant because everything's already set up in the back and all that kind of crazy complicated shit. We're just now also putting some power into it. And then, yeah, you put one of these in and you get 32 silicone wafer out, which just for completing this quest, you get 1 there. And I think you get a bit more also. Let's see. Yeah, so that gives you 1. I thought you got, I'm pretty sure you get 8 from this quest. I don't know why I'm wanting to say that you get 8, but I'm pretty sure you get a fair amount. So you put one of these in, you get that. How you get these little monocrystalline silicone is by taking your argon, putting it into an EBF, and putting some silicone dust and iridium tiny dust that we just got from earlier. Sure, it's only 5% chance, but all you need is 1 tiny dust of iridium, 32 silicone dust, which you already have access to pretty easily, and quite a bit of argon, given you got to remember you're only producing 35 millibuckets of this stuff per 30 seconds. So it's going to take you quite some time. And then this recipe in and of itself takes 75 seconds. However, once it's done, you are going to have something that you can go and turn into 32 silicon wafers. And you don't burn through these too fast, right? There's only being used 2 there, and 1 here. And I think that's the only 2 recipes that really use them. So again, you shouldn't run through them too quickly there. And with all of that, ladies and gentlemen, you finally round back out into the processing unit, which allows you to, alongside me, get on into the highly advanced machines. So again, everything here we should already know with the highly advanced and all that. Chromium, if you didn't know, now you know you can indeed turn this stuff into an ingot. You just have to go through the same process as everything else. Take the dust into the EBF, chromium hot, cool it off, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, essentially now what we're getting into is the gravi-chest plate, which is create a flight. The high pressure advanced large steam boiler, which I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm done with steam power. I think it's too much of a headache, and our diesel setup is running so immensely better with so much smaller headache. So all that's done. I guess we're getting into nuclear reactors next time because I'm gonna really try and finish this quest book out. We'll see how rough this whole last little section is. Sometimes the last section can be like, and now I need you to grind for 1,000 hours. Oh, non-negotiable. No, you can't speed it up past this point. I'm not saying that's this quest book. I'm just saying sometimes they like to throttle you or bottleneck you a bit too hard. So yeah, we'll basically see. I do want to finish this quest pack up because I have another one that I would like to get started on into. So with all that being said and out of the way, let me know what you thought of this video. Did you like the fact that I set everything up sort of as a precursor and that I could just speak my mind very freely without having to try and figure it out? And I would like to think I had a bit of a better flow and a bit more understanding about what all was going on, right? If so, like I said, leave it down in the comments below. If not, maybe some way that we can tweak this or any suggestions or ideas y'all may have for presenting this information in an understandable and fun manner. Anyways, as per the usual, if you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like down below, share it out with friends, family, strangers down the streets, and of course, subscribe if you're new here and you want to see more awesome content from yours truly. As per the usual, I do hope you all stay safe, stay awesome, and stay crafting. Until next time, you beautiful, beautiful people. Peace out.